So I spend a lot of time on this channel talking about things that already exist, right? Whether that's current hardware, accessories, games for said hardware or accessories. But today I want to go a totally different direction and just do something fun and entirely hypothetical. And that is, what should we expect, or what would be nice to have from a Steam Deck Pro? Now this is just the regular Steam Deck, obviously, and it almost feels irresponsible to talk about the idea of a Steam Deck Pro considering we've only had it for a few months at this point. But nonetheless, it's always fun to just sort of imagine, right, and think about what features might be coming down the pike for the next iteration of a piece of hardware. So that's what I wanted to do today, is just talk about things that I would like to see improved on the hardware of the current Steam Deck in the next iteration, and also some things from a software perspective that I thought might be nice as well. And then obviously if you have any of your own suggestions, I would love to hear about those too. But for now, let's just go ahead and start with the hardware and what I would love to see out of a Steam Deck Pro or a Steam Deck 2.0 or whatever you want to call it. And I think one of the first things I would like to see, or one of the most obvious things that would be nice to include, would be an OLED screen. At this point, I don't think it's unfair to say that I've been absolutely spoiled by the Switch's OLED screen, which I absolutely love, and I hope they just maintain that for the next iteration of the Switch, but I would also love to see it come to the Steam Deck as well. I'm not saying that I don't love the existing screen on the Steam Deck. I think it's fantastic, and it looks really nice when you're playing games. But doing this sort of side-by-side comparison from a couple weeks back of the Nintendo Switch versus the Steam Deck and the pros and cons of both of those systems, it became very apparent to me that even though the Switch does not have the processing power of the Steam Deck, I still really like the way indie games or really vivid, just like pops of color games looked on the OLED screen of the Switch, a lot more than I like the Steam Deck, despite the fact that it does have a larger screen, which, you know, itself has its own advantage, I guess. But yeah, I think that's one of the most obvious upgrades that they could do for a second iteration of the Steam Deck. Now, when it comes to the hardware of the controls themselves, I don't have a lot to complain about when it comes to the Steam Deck. I think that the control layout and all of the flexibility that it gives you with the Steam Deck is pretty incredible already, and I don't think there's a lot they need to change in this department. But there are a couple of nitpicks that I could point out. One is, I really wish that the rear paddles require just a little bit less force to activate. Like I mentioned in the Steam Deck impressions video from a while back, the rear paddles on the Steam Deck feel great. The only thing is they take a little bit more force than I'd like to actually activate those buttons. It almost feels like the opposite end of the extreme from the original Xbox Elite controller that I use, where those triggers pull way too easily. I think these ones take a little bit too much force to activate, and the scuff reflex that I got for the PS5 really hits that Goldilocks sweet spot where it takes a little bit of force to activate, but not so much that it's kind of annoying. Again, the Steam Deck's paddles are perfectly functional as they are right now. I'm just saying for my personal preference, I wouldn't mind them to be a little bit easier to depress than the way they currently sit. Also on the controller side of the things, I wish the rumble was more pronounced in the Steam Deck. I know it's there and there are games that take advantage of it, but it does not feel as pronounced as it should be. Now, I'm not sure if that's a design limitation because of the hardware, or if maybe there's some firmware update they could do to the existing Steam Deck to make that more pronounced, but in the next iteration I definitely want the force feedback to be a little bit more pronounced than it is. After experiencing something like HD rumble from the Switch's Joy-Cons, or the far superior haptic feedback that you get from something like the DualSense 5, I just feel like they could beef it up a little bit more in the next iteration of the hardware. And these final two are minor hardware gripes, and I almost wonder if Valve intentionally did not make these design choices because they were worried about how closely they would be mirroring the Switch if they did, but I would actually prefer to have the USB-C port that's on this system on the bottom of the unit rather than on the top, because I think it's just easier to access the cable that way, and if we actually did, you know, like 3D print a dock, or if there was an official dock later on for the next revision, it would be nice just to be able to drop it in place instead of having to like have a cable poking out of the top of it, where I worry a little bit about the strain relief of a setup like that. And then also, I would love for the system just natively have a kickstand. I understand there's ventilation on the back of the system as it exists today, so you probably wouldn't be able to have one that spans the length of the system, but I do think even in its current iteration, there is room on the system that they could have included a really nice kickstand. But again, I'm not sure if there was maybe some patent problem between, you know, what Nintendo Switch did with the OLED model or the Microsoft Surfaces and how those work with their hinge mechanism, but still, it would be nice to have an included kickstand rather than having to like 3D print one or cobble one together on your own, or just buy one off the shelf if you want to use it in sort of a tabletop mode. Now, moving over to the software side of things, of what I would like to see in the next revision, or if there was in fact a Steam Deck Pro model, it's kind of rough because I feel like Valve's already doing an amazing job of keeping its software up to date and rapidly putting fixes in place for its user base. Seriously, just in like the first 4 weeks of the Steam Deck being out, Valve was rolling out new features and bug fixes at an incredibly rapid rate. And in that really short time frame, we got some really awesome features like per title performance profiles, and then we also got like a 40 Hz mode as long as you were willing to install a beta version of the software. So Valve's been really on top of it with rolling out out new features, so it almost feels like a weird thing to discuss, but nonetheless, there are a few things I would change, and one of which I'm not positive if this would technically be hardware, or if it is something that could be fixed through software, but I would like the next iteration of the Steam Deck, or the Steam Deck Pro, if there's like, you know, a mid-generational refresh on this one, to have a more responsive touchscreen. Granted, I don't use the touchscreen that much, but every now and then if there's a launcher or if there's something that's happening on screen where it's just quicker and easier for me to reach out and tap a button, I would like it to be at least as responsive as what we get from the Switch now. And who knows, by the time this video comes out, it's entirely possible that they may have already released an update that improves the performance, but nonetheless, if that's not something that happens, I would love to at least see it on the next version of the Steam Deck where, you know, touch devices are pretty common nowadays anyways. Something else I'd like to see on a Pro model, assuming they don't roll out some software update for the existing model, is faster screenshots and also the ability to record video captures natively. Now, I've done a lot of Steam Deck videos on this channel already, but one of the things that kind of sucked was it was not easy for me to capture gameplay footage on the Steam Deck. I actually tried to do it a few different ways and I just could not get great results, and that's why I end up filming the screen a lot, which is a huge time and productivity sink compared to just like capturing footage and then just using that for things like cutaways and everything. And as an extension of the ability to take screenshots more quickly and also just do quick video captures, I really wish they had better integrated social sharing. I've become totally spoiled by things like the Xbox, PS5, and even the Switch to some degree, where I can take screenshots and, you know, video clips and instantly tweet them out to people on my Twitter, but I can't really do that on the Steam Deck very easily, at least not that I've seen so far. Everything that I've captured so far, at least for screenshots, it looks like I can only publish them to my Steam profile, which I'm not really active on my Steam profile. I don't have like a ton of Steam for, oh, that sounds so sad. I have friends, okay, they're just not on Steam. But no, seriously, it would just be nice if I could go ahead and capture quick clips and share out something awesome that I did in a particular Steam game when I was playing it on the deck, that's all. And finally, the last thing I think I'd want from a software perspective that I've noticed so far is faster suspend resume functionality. I'm not saying the suspend resume function is bad now, it's just that every time I try to do it, it seems like there's a little bit of a delay, and I'm always worried, like, especially if I'm playing an action game where I'm in the middle of a fight and need to, like, you know, put it into sleep mode quickly, that I'm not going to be in a great position whenever I go to resume. I'm not sure if they could add something like quick resume as well. I mean, that might be a little bit too much to ask for. I don't know if that's like a proprietary Microsoft thing that they get to do on the Xbox, but that would be a neat feature as well. But beyond that, there's really just not a lot for me to complain about with the current software setup for the Steam Deck. Like, yes, it can occasionally be buggy and weird at times, but bugs are something that get ironed out over time. I can't really think of any major features that are lacking or something I'm like, oh, I wish I could do this, aside from just, again, you know, like suspend or resume functionality or better options to social sharing, for example. But yeah, those are all the things that I could really think of that I would like to see improve from the Steam Deck experience. What about you? Is there anything that you have found in your time with the Steam Deck so far where you're like, ooh, I wish this worked a little bit better, or hey, you know, why can't this hardware feature exist maybe in the next version of the Steam Deck whenever it manifests? If so, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. As always, thanks for taking the time to hang out on the channel. It means a lot. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.